Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the Psychogeographer and Compass pub. I'm Vicky Minton. I've dressed as closely as I can to Peggy Mitchell. Big earrings a la Bet Lynch, and we're just going to have a wonderful evening tonight. Behind me there's an array of bottles that I've managed to dig out from my own store to give us a real pub atmosphere. We're actually in the snug here. So that's me. And I'd also like to say that I'm joined by Tim O'Connor, who is our cellarman. He's our multi-talented licensee, and he's going to do the technology for us well in and amongst polishing the optics. So, Tim, thank you very much indeed for being here tonight and for helping us. So thank you, everybody who's already here in the studio and waiting to do their performances. I'm just going to remind you who we've got. First of all, to say we hope you've got your favourite tipple and maybe a packet of crisps, if that's allowed in your regime. A wonderful evening of poetry and performance. We've got Roy Bayfield, of which a bit more anon, who's going to launch his new book here tonight. We've got Frank Malloy and his pilgrimage through London. Sonia Overall, who is one of our very own 4W Cop poets, and that's the first half. And then later on we've got Phil Wood talking about his bottle top collection, far more fascinating than people would realise, I think, and then a drift along session later on with a fabulous radio performance that goes live on another platform. So we're going to start with Antony, because Antony's film, hello Antony, and we're going to say hi Antony, and we're going to say goodbye to Tim, and just Antony, thank you very much for joining us under some strange circumstances, really, because you're in a car but you're not driving. Is that right?
Yeah. The fourth world carpool.
Well, the thing about that I felt about your film, I mean, you're obviously extremely passionate about that place and about Huddersfield. I'm just going to move my so I can get some on my nose. Why are you so passionate? Where did that come from?
I suppose I'm not a Huddersfield native, so it's not from being born and bred in Huddersfield or Yorkshire. I would say it's more from moving to Huddersfield, learning about the history and the legends, and becoming attached to those legends, really. And that's the be all and end all.
Yes, because you obviously love it. And I thought you never made a film before, am I right?
No, that was the first. Yeah.
And you resourced all those pictures and all those references. How did you do that?
The vast majority of the pictures were my own. The references, I am currently studying and writing other things related to Huddersfield, so it was all derived from that work.
Well, it obviously shines through. I'll tell you what struck me as well. There's something of the rapping about it. There's a rappish sort of rhythm. Did you mean that to be the case?
Not necessarily, but my background is in rap. And
so I'm right. I was detected.
Yeah. I've attempted to do poetry, and I see that a lot of my rap skills, let's say, are coming through, but poetry gives me more freedom. I find I'm not stuck to the rhythm of a beat or anything like that.
No, that was good, and the same with the rhyming side of it. Have you written poetry before this?
Yes, that wasn't my first. Yeah, I've got a lay that I'm doing about my daughter, which is like it's got to be a lifetime piece of writing. But yeah, that's kind of my first thing. The Willow Melee.
That sounds interesting. So that's your next project. I want to go back to. All right, okay. I want to go back to the theme of Castle Hill, and you were very discreet and restrained in not talking about the destroying of the pub that used to be up there. and it has been very controversial locally. So people who aren't from Huddersfield won't know just how much of the local press, how much print has been dedicated to the destruction of the demolition, I suppose I should use a better word to use, of the pub, and then lots of plans to change it, to put new structures. What do you know about that? What's your position on that, Anthony?
I don't have much of an emotional position in terms of outrage and whatnot, because I'm not a native, and when I moved to Huddersfield, the pub was already gone. Now, my opinion on building something else is quite complicated, because I just don't believe there could be a better structure than the Castle Hill Inn that was on there, the one designed by William Wallen.
Right. Yeah, and yes, as you said, it was the same guy who built the was it the Cat George Hotel? Was it the same architect? Yes, who did that? Tim is a beer aficionado, I have to say. I think that's the right term. And he knows an awful lot. But did you know about, you mentioned in your thing Edgar North, who fell to his death?
Edgar North, who fell from the tower.
Yes, and I've got a little note on that because Tim's found a newspaper cutting. It says, right. Tower tragedy. On the 14th of November, 1899, Mr. Edgar North fell to his death from the top of the turret. Although suicide was mentioned, it was thought that the victim had most likely died as a result of an accident brought about by drinking 5, in quotes, threepenny specials at the Castle Hill Hotel. Each special included 2 beers and 3 whiskies, and it had 5 of those. After this incident, fencing was put around the viewing platform, quite rightly so. But I mean, that's a lot of booze, isn't it, to be staggering around a tower. So what do you think you'll do next? Because I think you should do something next.
In terms of related to Huddersfield history, I have got a piece of historic fantasy in the works that I'm working on. I think it's kind of been what I've working on for years, and things like this poem have come out of it.
Yes.
So
yes, well, yeah. Well, I hope you, with every success with your next project, Hunting. Really, thank you very much for doing this, because you did it especially for this Congress, and I hope we'll see you again in the future, and maybe in real life. Yes, okay, absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. So we're going to go to our next part of the session, and as I said earlier on in my introduction, we're delighted to have Roy Bayfield here. Hello, Roy. You're in your, now tell us what your situation is. You said something about secondhand books.
Well, yeah, this is the book corner of the pub, I suppose, you know, where they put random books up just as a display, just because the spines look nice.
Yes.
But in reality, I'm missing secondhand bookshops so much because I can't go out my house really. So I've opened my own one in this corner. So this is where I'm dispatching books around the world from my Amazon and eBay sales.
Is that what you do? Oh, right. Okay. Well, but we're very pleased and proud, Roy, that you're going to be launching your new book from the 4W Congress this year. It's called Ejector Seat, Stationary Poetry. And I think we've got it available in the shop, have we? And if we haven't, we've got a psychogeography shop.
It's still working its way through production, unfortunately.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. So it's red hot. This is a red hot moment. So I'm going to back off and I'm going to let you do your reading. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Okay. So this all started a year ago, pretty much a year ago to this very evening, when at the 2019 Fourth World Congress of Psychogeography, there was an event organised by Crab and Bee, aka Helen Billinghurst and Phil Smith, that included a sort of magic ritual around the statue of Harold Wilson outside the Huddersfield train station. And a lot of that was about the future and about the kind of positive views of the future. and I won't try and rehash everything that Helen and Phil did, but part of that involved participants making promises to try and draw a more positive future towards ourselves and towards the world. And the promise I made was to write some poetry. So that's actually led to the booklet I've just done. I imagined that would be kind of doing some kind of psychogeographical exercise and then poetry being an output of that. But then, of course, COVID and stuff. And basically, I've been indoors for most of the time for 6 months, which explains the haircut. So the stuff I've written is I would say it's still psychogeography, but not based on physical outdoors walking. So the kind of stuff I've written about is memories, dreams, extensive, prolonged, extreme telewatching, the view from my window. I do a kind of stepping exercise every day, and outside my window you can see, synchronistically, you can see a geographical feature called the Devil's Wall, which, like a lot of these devil features around the world, has a massive story behind it. So interesting that another devil related feature cropped up in Antony's film. But amongst all that, I did do an epic journey. For a long time, I've wanted to visit roads around the country called Boundary Road. So where I'm from, which is Hove and Portslade in the south coast near to Brighton, Boundary Road is pretty much the first street I remember. It's just a street full of shops. Interestingly, it has two names. As far as Portslade is concerned, it's called Station Road, and as far as Hove's concerned, it's called Boundary Road. So it's almost like Hove wanted to be the boundary between them and the slightly lower rent Portslade people. Anyway, I love that Boundary Road, but there are many others, and I thought it would be really cool to walk along all of them, which I've never got round to doing physically, because it would actually be a massive exercise. But I decided to do that during lockdown using Google Street View. So found where they all were using a kind of database of streets, and would find them on Google Maps and land the little yellow person into the street and kind of walk along the street boundary roads through the very constrained medium of my computer. So I've written some stuff about that. This is a piece called All Boundary Roads. Daily trips, an approximate gazetteer conjured in pixels, creating the world's double, a bargain golem. This action, a minor stream flowing backwards through the surveillance channels, transforming my peripheral cell into the panopticon's central observation tower. At first seemed like a pointless and pallid exercise, no way to pick up an object, smell the air, buy a pasty from Julie's cafe, no presence in the space, no there becoming here, then once again there, as steps and breaths are made. But noted after a while that the images of streets traversed in this way persisted like a microdose of dreams, odd items retained from the silt of the restricted letterbox drift, twilight wall of lives in the quiet windows of low-rise flats, small triangles of wild land, cherry trees older than the houses, cowboy wagon wheel mounted on a terraced house, sounding to forgotten frontiers, two dead Christmas trees outside a garage opposite a medical device factory, the way graveyards and disused gasometers make stretches of open sky, an invocation. Detritus of the Google vehicle process, sudden shifts, blurred trapezoids hover in the air, ghost map on each click. Summer becomes autumn in a single step. Graffiti appears and is erased. Figures striding the end of the boundary. Blur-faced ciphers become my fellow walkers, trapped in the past. Pedestrian by location, all included in the process. Trying to imagine all these boundary roads as one long road, flowing from north to south to the first road I remember. Despite some having dead ends, some being circular. Assemblage cut-up and wormhole training coming in handy. One hell of a crazy road. Logged 89 boundary road signs, each a two-word paradox. Boundary, drawing a line of furthest limit, dividing the world in two. Road, laying an open way, connecting to next things. And I wanted to find some way to record all of this thing that took me several weeks. And in the end, I decided to simply write the location of each of the roads that I hadn't walked along, to write one line about something I'd seen there, and one line harvested from the sort of digital world by Googling that location and finding some kind of words that were coming out of that street. So that could be something from a TripAdvisor review of a fish and chip shop, could be something from local papers, local history stuff, court reports, adverts for businesses, all sorts of things. So what I discovered was that although the streets often looked incredibly bland and basically just a bunch of houses, there was always some kind of language emerging from the kind of layers of accretions to that particular place. So for each of those places, I constructed a piece that includes a simple description of something I saw and a piece of found text, if that makes sense. So there's 89 of these. I think I've got time to read them all, but I will read part of that. And I actually started it off with a quote from Alan Garner, so another coincidence with Antony's stuff. This was a quote from Alan Garner that Andrea Capstick used in her presentation at last year's Congress that was foregrounding the psychology and psychogeography. So hat tip to Andrea. And what Alan Garner is saying: boundaries are not safe. They occupy neither time nor space. They let things through. Okay. I did not walk along Boundary Road EH14, trees heavy with shade, inspiring people who have blazed. I did not walk along Boundary Road G73, palisade fencing bent into shimmering curves, a guide to making representations. I did not walk along Boundary Road KA8, tarmac speckled white, similar businesses nearby, the lost world. I did not walk along Boundary Road CA2, fenced in overgrown triangle. Enhancer-promoter interactions were detected in this locus. I did not walk along Boundary Road TS1, shuttered red building and a steel bridge. Disoriented terms used are ritual. I did not walk along Boundary Road TS6, bungalows scoping cricket pitches, subjects of the sun-descended king. I did not walk along Boundary Road YO16, wild poppies surrounding a junction box, mobile mast on Comfort House. I did not walk along Boundary Road LA1, glimpsed from a roundabout through dusty shrubbery, arise virtual solutions. I did not walk along Boundary Road FY8, gull gliding under a grey cloud, everything was better than perfect. I did not walk along Boundary Road PR2, ginger cat alongside a red wall, random inspection to see who has a bin, would identify households without a bin. I did not walk along Boundary Road BB5, strips of parched grass, attack on the distribution question. I did not walk along Boundary Road WF13, profusion of flowers, life's too connected. I did not walk along Boundary Road DN33, strip of shaded sunbricks, interim disqualification. I did not walk along Boundary Road S2, wires radiate from a pole, a special smell, metallic I suppose. I did not walk along Boundary Road SK8, satellite dish above Celtic crosses, given a carrier bag with a tin of corned beef biscuits and a large block of chocolate. I did not walk along Boundary Road M27, man with 2 carrier bags angles the railway line, friendly closeout experts can help you. I did not walk along Boundary Road M44, bisecting an egg-shaped mandala, designed to help you develop key skills. I did not walk along Boundary Road WA10, shuttered closed down pub. The fish have started growing again. So that's about a quarter of that one. So leaving Boundary Road behind. As I said, also memories. My experience of space at the moment is media, memories, and physical objects that I find around the place, I suppose, a kind of archaeology of decluttering my house. The poetry book's called Ejector Seat, which comes from, if anybody remembers the most desirable toy of Christmas 1965 was a James Bond car with an ejector seat in it. Making a sort of sideways jump from Harold Wilson as the avatar of white hot technology. That was a different way, I suppose, of invoking a positive future, but also looking at it as where that's actually got us, I guess. So I'm going to read James Bond car 1965 and then another one if there's time. So James Bond car 1965. James Bond driving, secret operating features, retractable machine guns, opening roof and ejector seat, rear bullet screen, telescopic overriders, secret instructions. A gift promising exciting trajectories through the grown-up world. A man in a painted suit, forever fixed in driving seat, able to deploy spring-powered assistance via our giant fingers. Journey comes cocooned with streamlined defense. Push 1 button for solitude, 2 for concealment, 3 for an empty road shot through to resolution. Tracking lines of forward momentum toward the horizon of requirement, a golden journey. The rejected passenger flies sacrificed to a covenant with time, everything always onwards. Just ask the supersonic king-size concrete fascias of the sunlit squares. Ask strontium. Ask the cheery print of the instant packaging. Ask atomic stingray, navigating new Elizabethan oceans bubbling with potential, bounded only by the 4-minute horizon. The ejector drives onwards towards a serious somewhere. The ejectee hurtles in an unexpected arc. Okay, last one. I talked about memories and dreams, and this is a combination of both. It's called Hey John. A call came while I was cleaning the club one Sunday morning. Must have been 1985. It was John, the sound man. Wanted me to get some of the previous night's takings to pay his fines so he could get out of jail. What it was, he had a car business of sorts. Various dead vehicles left on the road accruing fines, which John argued were unfair as the cars could not move, some of them merely chassis with fewer than 4 wheels, really not even cars as such, so fines were not appropriate any more than tax bills sent to ghosts. The police and the courts disagreed. I phoned the boss, who said it was okay to lend John the money, finished work and walked up to Edward Street with £200 in a bin bag. The policewoman on the desk was surprised. "You must be a good mate." The cell was tiled, high and tiny. John, knees up on a bench, swathed in overnight denim fug. We rode back towards Hove on top of the bus. This quite a novelty for John, who was more of a car man, peering around in the mid-morning Sunday light, a kind of stunned surprise. We shook hands and I never saw him again, except one night in the Greys, a curt nod across a smoky crowd, until last night's dream, still on the journey away from the cell, now with a big car, somehow acquired along the way, stalled at the roadside on the A59 in Lancashire by the armaments place. So we're on the pavement, knowing the police are on their way, and I see in the back of the vehicle several sleeping babies, 8 soft heads, nestled in amongst toolboxes and tarpaulins. And I say, "Hey, John, we'll be heroes for rescuing these babies. This will cancel out all of the fines if only we explain it properly. We can spin this." Okay, I'm done.
Well, that was fantastic, Roy. Thank you very much indeed. I do just want to throw this out to anybody that might be out there. Did we, do you know when you mentioned the James Bond car? Wasn't one of them made in Huddersfield? Was it the Aston Martin? Anybody?
Oh, yes, it is, yeah.
And I think they've got the original model, well, the one that was what the film thing was modelled on, in the local Tolson Museum.
Awesome.
So when you come to Huddersfield in real life, Roy, you'll be able to have a look at that. Was that a true story, that last piece?
The first bit was that happened. Yeah, I used to work at a performance venue stroke nightclub in Brighton called the Zap Club. That was my first job after art college, where I was a cleaner. And I've written a book about that as well, called Performance Cleaner. Yeah, this guy really did need getting out of prison. We took the cash, and it was supposed to be a loan, and then he kind of disappeared. And it's just one of those things that left hanging. And then I did have that dream, in this, phenomenon now of people dreaming more because of having more time and different sleep patterns. So
yeah. We've just had a comment, actually. Somebody is thankfully just put in Aston Martin DB7, and the DB stands for David Brown, which was the big tractor manufacturers in Huddersfield, employed huge numbers of people. It's still here in a kind of presence, but I think it's owned by an American company. But anyway, lovely connections, like so much of this stuff. And Roy, good luck with this collection. I hope it sells like hotcakes, and that we get to hear more of your stuff in the future. So thank you very much for being here tonight. And yes, thank you. So we're going to go now to our next poet, who is Frank. And there you go, Frank, live against a map. Yes, hello there. And against a map, which is rather wonderful. And it's got Soul City Wandering, which is the title of your piece, and about your pilgrimage is the word you use, through London. Yes. And I hope you're going to let us see it through some fresh eyes. You've got 15 to 20 minutes. I think I better just let you know that, because I didn't say that at the beginning. Okay, so off you go, Frank. Thank you.
Well, just listening to Roy there and what he was saying about the lockdown, because what I do for a living, and this is why the map is behind me, it's an old map of London from the 1940s, and I love walking, and I'm very lucky to become a tour guide and to walk for a living. But of course, the whole tour industry has collapsed. And so I've been very much like everybody else, sort of twiddling my thumbs for the most part. And one of the things I found is that because of the lockdown situation and regarding psychogeography, our senses are a little bit being dulled a little bit. For example, we can't walk where we used to walk. You know, sometimes some of you may be walking in a supermarket. You've got to go around one way. I've seen it now in the airports. The other day, I was picking up someone at Stansted Airport, and it's a one-way system even for walking. You know, going to pick somebody up, carrying their bags or whatever. So we're really entering these kind of forbidden zones, and we're also, of course, because of the wearing the masks, we're losing our sense of smell to a certain extent. Our sense of smell's been blunted, and also, I guess, a little bit of taste as well. And it's also less tactile because, you know, if you're like me, you're touching things less, so you're no longer feeling the cold steel of a handrail or the groove of a wooden bench, that sort of thing. So to compensate, it's a little bit back to what Roy was saying just previously. You're trying to make the most of your other senses. So especially seeing and listening, which are the prime senses now to be using in this situation, but also listening, thinking. And as Roy said, he's going on dreams, and also stories and legends, so that they come sort of more into the fore. So the book that I've written, which is coming out on September the 30th, so in a few weeks' time, is called Soul City Wandering. You can see it just behind me, but it's actually out now, and it's actually also in the shop here at the 4th Congress. So I'm going to read a couple of poems, and these poems, what I've done is I haven't been sort of sitting twiddling my thumbs in the last 6 months. I've actually been going up to London while it's been empty, which has been pretty good, actually pretty fab in some respects, and walking a specific route, a pilgrimage of London. So that's why the book is called a London Pilgrimage. And to tie in with that, there are certain spots on this route. There's 12 points altogether, where I felt there is a lot of something called synergy. So basically multiple events happening at the same place. So I'd like to read a couple of poems. The first one is a little bit dark, so I'm just going to warn you now, this one is dark. It's about a bridge, which is actually just here. Let me see, yeah, just there above me, which is called Hungerford Bridge, which links the South Bank to the West End in London. And there's been a pedestrian bridge over that part of the river for the best part of 200 years. And London's bridges have been the scenes of quite some dark experiences. Obviously, just recently, I don't want to go into more recent times, but you know about the situations on Westminster Bridge and London Bridge. But we can also talk about back a few years ago, we can talk about the murder of a Bulgarian spy with the poison-tipped umbrella. Some of you may remember that one. Or indeed the murder or the hanging of God's banker, the mafia guy who was found hanging under Blackfriars Bridge. But this particular bridge I want to talk about is more about civilian murders, and that's why it's quite dark. So I'm going to do this one first, and then I'm going to finish on something a little bit lighter, just to lighten the evening. So this first one is called Obsessive Killing Disorder, and it's from the book. London, spend the night with me, craving over water, luring with bondage and escape the gaze of luminary artists. What I did that summer evening, drown the voice of an angel in a pool of her own blood. Strolled around for a couple of hours. London, spend the night with me, craving over water. Dredge up the worst types, psychotic, degraded, people on the edge. What I did that autumn evening, murdered a civil servant just for holding hands. Stamped on his face with all my might. Laughed and danced and put on makeup. London, spend the night with me, craving over water, invite to the gala, tramps, druggies, people on the street. What I did that summer evening, slayed a student who begged for help, threw him in the river for fun, joked and sang and exchanged kisses. London, spend the night with me, craving over water. Summon the famished ghosts that loiter on the embankment. What I did that autumn evening, killed a bartender for being there, kicked him so hard and punctured his spleen. Captured the moment on film for posterity. Cold inhumanity, burning insanity. A cold rage seizes one so deep. So many undone by unthoughtful death. Dear God, your very providence seems asleep. So that poem is called Obsessive Killing Disorder, and it's actually about real actual murders that took place on the bridge, and it refers to some of the comments that were made in the court cases after the murder. Pretty dark stuff. Anyway, lighten the mood a little. We are in a pub. Cheers, everybody. The next poem I'm going to do is about another place in London. It's in the city of London, the Square Mile. It's about a tree. It's about a London plane tree. And it's a very remarkable specimen of life. The London plane tree is a hybrid of the Asian and the American sycamore. And because it's a hybrid, it cannot breed itself, so it has to be planted. But this tree was planted on the corner of Wood Street, and that's right across the road from the famous Bow Bells. So this tree was born a true Londoner. It was planted over 200 years ago. In fact, it's 200 years ago next year. And it's the oldest tree in the Square Mile. It's 80 foot high, but it stands in the shadows of all the other sort of high-rise skyscrapers around it. So it's dwarfed, really. 80 years ago, it survived a direct hit from a bomb during the Blitz. This tree is an antidote to a very poisonous part of London. It's a very busy traffic corner down in Cheapside. And the London plain is actually impervious to pollution because it has a bark, and through the bark's pores, it breathes through those pores. And so when those become clogged, it just sheds its bark like a snake would shed its skin. So it gives it a unique speckled look. The leaves are also covered with hairs, which also clog the soot. And of course, it provides oxygen in the usual way. So this tree is called, this poem is called The Last of the Mohicans. The tree, a visible living tree, intertwining the Occident and the Orient by accident. A rootless cosmopolitan, shackled by its locks. Soaring 80 feet, yet it's hidden in the shadows. An interloping road amid the steel and concrete blocks. Surviving by regenerative bark exfoliation, resilient chirpy cockney, as native as can be, cradling the songbirds that sing of joy and pain, an old romantic guru of ancient reverie, confronting the pollution of stupendous roars of traffic, rebel eco-warrior, unraveling the vapours, protecting local commerce throughout its lone existence, a refugee and migrant, sheltering its neighbours, raking its rhizomes through the ravages of time, relic of our history, the tree does not forget. Spreading out its limbs on a city centre corner, a rugged Jesse as emblem, an old cross surrogate. Jeremiah, Obadiah, Hanakana, Uncle Bill, remembered by the reaper of the decaying fallen stone. I hope and I pray that rough winds won't shake its resistance. Against all the odds, this real-life superhero holds its own. Okay, so that's the other poem from the book Soul City Wandering. And that's really the two poems I'm going to do tonight. And I think now I'm going to hand you back to Vicky, and I hope you enjoyed.
Well, thank you. Frank, before you go, I mean, you've only had 10 minutes, you know, and we'd originally going to get you out. You said you might have. Would you be prepared to do a bit more?
I will.
They're very powerful presentations. That first one was very powerful performance, as well as the poem itself having an impact. And the same with the tree. Did you learn to do performance poetry? Would you call yourself a performance poet?
Well, I wouldn't, but I am a tour guide, so you have to be, to an extent, you have to be.
Yes.
Yes. So I suppose it comes with that, and you have to explain it. So it's good practice at the moment because I'm not doing any work. So
yeah. Well, would you mind doing reading some of them? Thank you.
Yes. This one's about a church. It's about a church called St. Foster's Church. It was originally called St. Vedas Church, and through the London language, it changed somehow to St. Foster's Church. But it's just in the city of London. And if you ever get down to the city of London, you can go to these churches. They're always open. Fantastic places. Most of them are built by Christopher Wren or Hawksmoor. There are some older ones. But this one is quite an interesting one because it's an amalgamation of many other churches. So during, of course, I've just mentioned the Blitz in the last poem. And what happened was, of course, a lot of the churches were lost in London. They were destroyed. And just after the war, there was a fellow called Mortlock who got together with a few other people, and he collected all these bits and pieces from the churches that were destroyed and put them all into St. Foster's. So I don't know if the right word is to use a kind of Frankenstein's a monster of a church, but you can understand what I mean. They put all these things in together. This actual poem, I was in there one time, and a chap came in there with his son, and he was just talking to his son about the church. It was completely empty, very, very quiet. And so this poem is called Foster Father. I'm just going to see a bit more light here so I can see the poem because I'm reading it directly from the book. Foster Father. Bloody hell. It's so quiet. It's bloody quiet in here. Yes, son, it's very quiet. You really shouldn't swear. After all, this is a place where people come to pray. A CH blank blank CH. What's missing, by the way? What are you doing? Put that back. That's our Lord's thorny crown. What's your name, Bardolph? Heavens, if it ain't nailed down. Pardon me for looking. It ain't like when in Rome. Oh, Father, please forgive me. Who's Bardolph when at home? Never mind, forget it. Come on, honey bunch. I think that it's stopped raining. Let's go and get some lunch. Ah, I got it. Clever. Dad, you are on form today. Yeah, that pulpit is impressive. Well, I think anyway. Gibbons, I should imagine, judging by the carving. Core, you know your stuff, don't you? Come on, let's go. I'm starving. So that's Foster Father from the same book. How are we doing, Vicky? I think you're Vicky, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Frank. That was really stunning. And just to pick it out of the book like that, do you write a lot of poetry as well as do your guiding work?
Well, the psychogeographic stuff I've been doing for about 15, 20 years, and I've been putting it together, and I've never really had the confidence to put it out there. And of course, I suppose one of the advantages of the lockdown is it's just in some ways it shuts doors, but in other ways it opens doors. So it did give me the opportunity to say, let's put it together. I'm going to do a route around London and work out these poems so you can actually follow a route and then go to these places. And they're all accessible. It starts off in the centre of London, in the West End, sort of Piccadilly Circus. It works its way around, but I wanted to include South London and North London. So it does go into Southwark, and it finishes off in Kenwood House, which is up in Hampstead. Yeah, a bit dark in places.
So can I just ask you, how does the book work? Has it got maps and walks and then the poems?
Yes. So essentially, the poem starts first, and then I explain how the poem, why the poem is, what's inspired me for the poem, and then each poem is a point. So there's 12 points, and then at the back there's a map of how you follow those points through London. But the thing is, I've also explained, because it's kind of in a way it's an introduction to psychogeography, and I was very keen to sort of open it out. So there's a lot of light, what I call psygeo light, which is I've done a walk of sort of rock and roll pubs of Soho at the back, something a bit lighter that people and there's also a piece on the British Museum, which is very much in the news at the moment, of how some of the exhibits have caused so much controversy over the years because of where they are, where they've come from, but how in that same space they've also inspired poetry. So Byron and etc.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I can already think of a couple of people I know who live in London. I live in Huddersfield, but who would really love that book. I think it would be very inspiring, and they probably are psychogeographers, but they don't know it. And I think this is what's been coming through from a lot of the sessions today, is that people didn't know whether they were. And somebody said, "At last, I've been diagnosed." In one of the comments, I've been diagnosed as a psychogeographer. All my life I've been one, and it's very difficult. I asked some people earlier on today to try and define psychogeography, and what makes it. Why isn't it just walking or rambling or loitering, and people are reluctant to pin it down, and I suppose that's partly its attraction, that there's a fluidity about it, which means practically everybody is who steps out, takes any steps anywhere, inside or out. Just one last question then, Frank. This lockdown, how much of an impact has that had on your creative work? Have you been able to do some sort of psychogeography walking within your own territory, inside perhaps? Or
yes, and it's in some way, lockdown is a misnomer, because in some ways it's opened it up for me, but as I was saying at the beginning, it shut down some of the senses, the feeling, the touching, the smell and the taste, but it's like you kind of compensate with it by sort of listening and you're sort of interacting in different ways, and that this book has actually come out from that lockdown period, so it's kind of been inspired by it, really. So absolutely.
Yes, some people have been finding this period inspiring as well as very, very difficult. Well, Frank, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you. Cheers, and we're going to now go to our very own resident poet, Sonia Overall. Sonia's going to introduce herself. Cheers. Oh, she's got a very large glass of something. What could that be? Oh, Sonia, you need to unmute. There we are.
It's Plymouth Special Gin.
Oh, yes.
It's a very special Plymouth gin purchased secretly for me by my husband at the Walking's New Movement conference in Plymouth.
Oh.
It's a good one. It's a psychogeographical gin. So
is this your Saturday night special tipple then?
It's in honour of tonight. It's a very special.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well done. Okay. Well, I don't know what you're reading. You're just going to, however much time you want. We've got plenty of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to read
off you go.
I'm going to read some poems from my pamphlet, The Art of Walking, which feels rather appropriate. And I hope you can see me okay with my lighting. It's very dark up here. I'm in my attic study, and I need some light to read. So I'm going to be slightly sideways. My apologies. So this is from The Art of Walking. There are two sections in The Art of Walking. One is method, and the other is psychogeography. And I'm going to give you a little taste from each, if that's okay. This is the first poem, and it's called Précis. It is simple, and soon you will be running. But now you must make those tentative trails the 1-2-1, an expected trip. This is just a beginning. First, you must fall. Once you have balance, you may begin a game. You are coltish, a stripling. You are a swaying sapling feeling to the tips of fine fibred roots and pulling them free. The ground is uneven. The plain is littered with obstacles. You will learn to negotiate these. Left, right, left, right. Find the rhythm, grow taller, take on speed. Walk. Do this without thought, without effort. Walk as if your feet were lungs serving their unconscious purpose. Walk holding hands. Walk on low brick walls and high grassy banks. Walk along the wet, perilous perimeters of swimming pools. Walk on the gnarled foundations of Roman villas. Stub your toes on ancient hooks of flint. Walk carrying lunchboxes in the shapes of animals. Walk carrying satchels containing Latin textbooks, plimsolls and unfinished homework in exercise books ruled with faint blue ink. Walk carrying all of your worldly possessions in a bundle on a stick, a dog nipping at your heels, your clothes in rags, laughing. Walk in parks. Walk on beaches. Walk beside busy roads and attempt to negotiate traffic. Walk in supermarket aisles, steering trolleys, avoiding contact. Walk for pleasure, slowly. Walk to clear your head. Walk to fill it. Walk in sunshine with head high, seeking birdsong in trees, blinking in the light. Walk in rain under percussive umbrellas. Walk into high winds, gasping, shedding garments. Walk in sackcloth under raining blows, head bared, guilt-ridden. Your soles thicken. Your legs fold like poorly hinged gates. Your ankles soften with fluid. Your knees buckle. Take a seat. Allow your feet to rest on cushioned stools. Attach wheels to furniture, to stationary objects, to high-sided chairs. This is an ending. Allow others to walk. Just watch. Inverted. There are stars in the grass. You feel these with outstretched fingers. Your nails root in the soil, tickling the soft bodies of seeking worms. Your palms flatten. Your toes spring skywards. Your wrists beat with pressure, your knuckles rise and fall like viaducts. Your fused calves are an arching whip above your torso. Your pointed feet are a hovering scorpion sting. You look the laced boots of your companions humbly in the eye as you recede, a scraping suitor from their presence. You are a diver. The horizon swallows you. Asymmetrical. The path narrows, forcing you into separateness. You would reach for a steadying elbow, but there is no room here for touch, the blank windows of the terraces too close. This is stolen time, adrenaline thumping weight into your hinges. The tarmac crackles with it. You sink into chairs, flanking the hard pool of tabletop, the shape of a warning sign. Grateful, you wear your weariness like an old blanket. It settles into your folds. It settles into your folds like an old blanket. You wear your weariness, grateful, the shape of a warning sign flanking the hard pool of tabletop. You sink into chairs. The tarmac crackles with it, adrenaline thumping weight into your hinges. This is stolen time. Too close, the blank windows of the terraces. There is no room here for touch. You would reach for a steadying elbow, but forcing you into separateness, the path narrows. This poem is about those moments when you're desperate to go for a walk and you're stuck indoors and you're being very polite about the fact that you can't go for a walk, and something of you just dies and stays in the room and the rest of you leaves anyway. This is called non-corporeal. A blackbird cuts across the grid of window, and within the room you continue the call and response, following the apertures of small interests, the opening and closing remarks, the chases and cul-de-sacs of conversation, waiting for the black dart of wing to reprise. Already your thoughts have stretched their arms, risen, sought coats and boots, leaving you for the broad avenue smelling of rain and impending night. The stark trees stencilled against pasteboard sky, where day fades faster than they can walk, the dying battery of an old torchlight, leaving your body in the muffled room to fend for itself. This is a poem that I wrote after a time when I was commuting a lot and coming home really late and really noticing just what a sense of collapse it was to come home. It's called Late Train Arrival. Moist-mouthed O of moon, bright as a street light, frost sequins concrete. Leaf shadows on the path, a willow pattern. You are the figure on the bridge, stooped as hope, low satchel bruising right thigh. Behind you the train gates raise, release. Not a soul on the street. Fox scent planted in crevices like white man's foot, jack by the hedge, early to flower, bolting. These late nights home. Every mile a long-drawn breath. You taste the salt of it, pull out your key and falter, foolish legs folding beneath you, iron girdles crashing into the sea. How are we doing for time, Vicky? I didn't hear that, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I am. I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yes, I was going to say I've got a couple as well. But if you'd like to do one more, because mine are very, very short. Yeah,
Okay.
mine are very short. Okay.
I'll do the last one in the book because it gives us a bit of closure.
Okay.
Thanks. Mappa Mundi. Begin wherever the arrow falls. You may need chalk to mark perimeters where land and sea meet. Borders are not barriers to progress, but stepping on cracks as is crossing continents. They do things differently there. Crossroads are perfect places to loiter and bargain for wares, souls, or melodies. But beware deep woods, wolves, witches in trees, ditches where bodies may roll, bandits, brothers who prove false, lovers likewise, and be sure never to take the left-hand fork. Skirt about the hems of lakes. Avoid dipping toes in rivers. Never board a boat with blackened sails. Block your ears when the singing begins, but walk. Walk until you meet a man who asks questions of your oars, your eyes, and your intentions, and stop there.
You don't mind me saying so, I found a lot of what you wrote really did resonate for me.
Thank you.
I've got three little poems. One is, I'm going to start, it's a different tone from you, really, Sonia, and it's called Barmaid. Given that I'm dressed for the occasion, I thought I'd do that. But it's at a time when you could smoke in a pub. So I'll kick off. His licensed name embossed above the door. Mine host sits with his lovely lady wife, upstairs in chairs as velvet as burgundy, a plant, a pint, and snooker on TV. And me down here with aching feet and heart, my bicep hard from pulling on the pump, my smile rehearsed and ready for its cue, my ears awash with songs of love and lust, 10 pence for one, 15 for two. The cig ends burnt itself into the wood and left a stain of resin at the edge. He'd kill me if he knew what I had done. I'm not supposed to smoke behind the bar. A quiet night, as Tuesdays often are, and time to wash away the webs of foam from glasses left marooned on copper tops. These monuments to moments licked away, warmed by my washing hands and softly dried, and now put back into their proper place and left in silent darkness of the night. So that's what we'll be doing later on tonight. Me and Tim will be clearing up. Thank you. This one's called In the Distance. In the distance, far on the smoke-grey hills, the sky sits flat as the sea, seared with the ladder trail of a plane, silent as a snail. Rooftops stacked as a memorial to that breathing town, glint slimy with moss, frilled with weed-filled gutters, elder saplings sprouting from the chimney pots, a Babylon garden on the derelict slates. A motor changing gears, the crackle of rubber on gravel, someone desperate to leave. And high in the green leaves, a single sparrow, unseen and nodding, picks the air and flutters to the ground like litter. And then this is my last one, and it's called Frost. In the alchemy of night, frost has paralysed all that's moist, starched the field and sucked colour from lichened fence and stone. What was green is almost white, and earth, rough as tweed, shows its chevrons and twigs are chilled to the bone. Yesterday's berries wait to be found in the snaggings of brambles, coiled, stiff, barbed as wire, and a horse, making no sound in the nail-spiked grass, hooks its hoof at the rigid ground. Cellophane, tossed from a packet in milder times, lies in the gutter, sharp and angry as broken glass. Spat out from the grit are pebbles of gravel, glow amber on the tarmac beaches of road and path. The winter sun, its lemon light acid but failing to burn, or give the trees their shadow. This land, locked in the glue of ice, leaks its shape into the bitter sky. There we are, that's me done. So thank you for clapping, Sonia. We've come to the end of our poetry bit, and I just want to thank you, Sonia, for joining us, as well as Frank and Roy for all the lovely contributions that they made, and Anthony's gone now. I'm not surprised because you know he was in the in a car for some reason. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to do, since we're a tied house, and before we go to our next session, we're going to have a quick word from our sponsors at the 4W Cop Brewery, but stay with us because we want to introduce our next session. Okay, so a quick plug from...
Thank you for joining us for a very unusual 4th World Congress of Psychogeography. While you wait for the next piece of great content, we thought you might like to hear from us about how you can support the Congress. It turns out that a virtual Congress is more expensive than a physical one. Who knew that you sitting in your chair cost us more money than walking around Kirklees? So we'd be extremely grateful if you could help us cover some of those unplanned costs via one of our crowdfunding options, which you can see here and are also linked on our social media and website. We hope you enjoy the content and make sure to get involved on our social media channels or in the chat, because we can't wait to hear from you. Enjoy the show, and we look forward to seeing you back in Huddersfield next year. Thank you for joining us for a very...
Well, thanks. That's Dave, who's a member of our team, and we really have to say how grateful we've been to the University of Huddersfield over the years for giving us so much support in the way of staff, resources. It's been a wonderful thing. So now, with our glasses replenished, it's time to drift seamlessly to the second half of our drift along part of the evening, and we're going to start with Phil Wood's fascinating celebration and exploration of the psychogeography of bottle tops, and later on you'll be able to drift along to Tim daughter's radio program, which you're going to access through a platform called Twitter. His show is called Psychogeography is Dead, a radio show, but we'll give you some warnings about that later on. And Phil really wants people to join in. This is an interactive session ultimately, isn't it, Phil?
Yeah.
So over to you. Okay.
Vicky, thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Make yourself comfortable. Get a bottle of your favourite tipple. Pour it out. And try and get this show on the road. So I'm going to be showing some pictures. You won't have to look at me all night, thank God. But please bear with us. Get this going. And are you seeing what I'm seeing? Is the main thing. You should be. Okay. Please charge your glasses. And we'll get the event going. Okay, I'm going to start. So make yourself comfortable. So I never cease to enjoy taking caps or tops or crowns off bottles. The long shh as the gas released and the slow pervading aroma, followed by the tinkle of the cap as it hits a hard surface. It's a psychosensual buried deep in my subconscious, derived from childhood experiences of secretly spying on my dad and granddad enjoying their evening beers. But in terms of thinking about bottle caps in a psychogeographic way, I think it all began when I was in Prague, and I was almost spontaneously, I decided, but rather than get the tram or the shuttle bus for the 19 kilometers from my hotel back to the airport on my way home, I was going to walk it, like you do. I was inspired by Will Self's book, an idea of walking from London to Heathrow. And as I was traveling with only a light bag, and it seemed like an opportunity too good to miss, the reasons why I decided to walk all that way to the airport and what it was like is a story for another day. But any one of you who've taken walks in strange or familiar locations will know that once you embark, your mind often falls into ways of giving patterns or meanings or inducing little motivations to both break up the journey, but also to give it an overall coherence. It's not necessarily that one sets out with the intention of, say, logging every house with a red door or noticing the inscriptions on the metal inspection covers in the pavement. It just sort of happens. And once you've logged a few, you start to be impressed and intrigued that they seem to exist in far greater variety than you ever imagined was possible. And the satisfaction of finding another variant is then rapidly followed by the heightened sense of vigilance and anticipation of the next one that might be coming along. And this is how it was with me and bottle caps. There was just one nestling between the fall pipe and the wall in the pavement in central Prague. A second one teetering on the edge of the grating. I congratulated myself on noticing a third that had obviously been carefully secreted into a crack in the wall along the street. Of course, the Czech Republic and Prague itself are a good place to start. It's a beer drinking kind of place, isn't it? I mean, where flicking the cap off a bottle is just part of the culture. Even so, once my brain had locked in on discarded tops in the street and my eye was in, I was a little surprised to find just actually how few bottle tops there were on the streets of central Prague. Certainly compared to my recollections of previous visits, and the brands that they represented were, well, the global commonplace, the international names such as Fanta and Coca-Cola. And this became my first observation of what bottle tops can tell me about the nature of things and places. The brands told me that central Prague is no longer the sole property of the Czech people, but has become a universal commodity into which global commerce has claimed ownership. And in deference to this, the local authorities have embarked upon a scrupulous cleansing of the city centre to make it palatable to tourists. So it wasn't really until I'd crossed the river and started to climb into the residential suburbs of Prague that I noticed a change in the kinds of bottle tops that I was finding on the street, and something much more recognisably Czech. And these are the kind of things I was picking up as I got into the neighbourhoods. And the walk kind of threw up some interesting points, some general points. I started to be intrigued about where people deposit tops. And I mean, what's the story behind it? Is there a story behind where and why people chuck these away? The classic case of the tops stamped into soft asphalt on a warm day, the abstract spattering of tops and cigarette stubs where a small group of people have spent the evening. And I mean, then you start to thinking, well, who were these people? I mean, and what were they doing here, and why, and what maybe were they talking about? What was the kind of mood, the dynamic going on between them? Can the arrangement, the configuration of caps tell us anything like that? And then before you know it, you're starting to get your eye in and feeling like some kind of wilderness tracker following the footprints of wild animals. So does this arrangement of tops indicate two people together? The obvious case of maybe one person drinking alone, having a fag and a bottle. Why were they alone? What were they thinking? What kind of stories might you concoct? And is it all bullshit, or is there anything we can learn from this? Another way of thinking is to look at the top itself and imagine the time that it's been in position by calculating the degree of corrosion. I mean, eventually these things disintegrate and dissolve back into the earth from whence they came. And this is almost taken into the realms of psychogeology. Blimey, you're probably thinking at this point, for God's sake, if Phil Wood spends this much time seeking out and analysing bottle tops, how the hell did he ever manage to catch his plane at Prague Airport? And it initially surprised me that I could spend so much time literally sifting through the detritus of the street. But I mean, recently I was looking back through loads of photographs because I travel a lot, and it was amazing me just how many photographs that I take of places are literally with me groveling on my stomach in the dirt. So there you are. I don't know why, but it happens. All of this reminded me of the first time I'd ever been on a walk with a group of people who consciously and explicitly described themselves as psychogeographers. And it was the Leeds Psychogeography group. And they'd arranged a circular perambulation of the Leeds Public Space Protection and Exclusion Zone, which prohibited street drinking in the city centre. And here's the organiser of the group and the walk, and it's Tim Waters brandishing his bottle of beer. And yes, that is the same Tim Waters that is going to be coming up after me this evening. And of course, there should have been no surprise at the connection that I'm trying to make between psychogeography and beer bottle tops. The founder of the situationist movement that really led to psychogeography, Guy Debord, was famously a drinker of heroic proportions. And indeed, as Merlin Coverley attests in his book, Psychogeography, the Situationist International was founded at a boozy session in an Italian bar in 1957. So one can imagine the scene after all these situationists, mostly pissed by that time, I should think, were thrown off the premises by the bartender. And you can imagine the scene on the floor and the collection of bottle tops that would have been a treat for someone of my predilections. So after having that Prague moment, quite a few of my walks since then have now been enhanced or sometimes even guided by the bottle tops that I find on the way. Let me just tell you about one of them, just to illustrate what I derive from these derives. Here's a walk I took a few months ago in South London whilst visiting my daughter over Christmas. It was in a badland of palisade fencing and dodgy lock-up garages on an empty road in the desolate tract of the Crayford Marshes on the south bank of the Thames. It's a road where almost nothing moves apart from roaring lorries carrying waste to the tip. I've been going for about 5 miles and thinking to myself, I haven't seen a single bottle top at all yet. And then I suddenly spied one ahead of me. And I recognized it instantly as a Polish beer called Perla. Then only a few feet away were 2 more Perla beer bottle tops. And then nestled in a cluster, almost a nest, are 3 Perla bottle tops. To me, this felt like some kind of still life or an assemblage created by whom or to what purpose, I knew not. But why only here, where no one walks at all, and why all of the same brand? I guess it must be one of the drivers of the dumper trucks who perhaps had stopped off here after his final load of the day, and maybe he was Polish, maybe he was even from the city of Lublin, where the Perla beer is brewed. And I thought no more of it, and until 2 days later, I was back home in my hometown of Huddersfield, wandering around the town centre in the shady neo-Gothic yard of Byrom Court. I was about to mount the steps, and I saw it. It was there. It was winking at me, a bottle top, face down, saying, "Come on, turn me over." But you know what? I didn't even need to turn it over because I knew it was telling me I'm going to be a Perla. And it was. So what's going on here? I mean, is this some kind of magic? Was there somebody walking ahead of me, dropping these things for only me to find? Well, it may be magic, and someone out there may have a magical explanation for it, but I'm given to more prosaic explanations. The Polish grocery store is just around the corner. Perla is a very popular brand of beer for Poles abroad. The way I explain such apparent coincidences is that it's about paying attention. once you start to seriously give a damn and notice what is really around you, you notice all kinds of things you previously overlooked. There are a million such coincidences taking place every day. It just so happens that 999,990 of them never get recognized because no one was paying close enough attention. But you will be from now on, won't you? When that bottle top appears in the street in front of you. But this particular incident allows me to really talk about and expand on what I think and feel whilst I'm walking and what
Phil,
I think
Phil, it's Vicky here. We've just been looking at a black screen all this time, and we don't know whether you've been showing us the illustrations of your bottle tops. And one or two people are commenting on that.
I've shown you about 50 slides. Oh God.
Yeah, we didn't know whether this was a very, very extended introduction.
No.
But really forgive me for interrupting, but we're getting some
No,
comments.
you need to interrupt because otherwise, who's going to see it?
Well, exactly. So, what's the story here? We've got the screen, but we haven't got your slides. And I think you tried to. What we saw first of all was your list of files. So we went into your computer and saw your files list, and then I noticed that you ticked the item that said your slides, but it hasn't loaded them. So I didn't know whether to break in and tell you the bad news and then really destroy your confidence, or see if there's something that we can do. Tim, do we know what we can do?
How do I get these damn slides on show then?
Well, you did it before, didn't you? Very successfully. Tim, are we able to help here? You need to unmute. And hello, Tim. Can you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Yeah. The sharing happens from Phil's end, so it's not possible to reverse engineering.
What can you see at the moment?
Well, can now see a screen.
Can anybody see slides?
Well, can see we can obviously. Well, it looks like your screen with all of us, but can't see your bottle tops.
Blimey. Oh, Jesus. I just don't know what to do.
Go back into your PC.
Yeah.
And find that folder that you want.
Well, I'm looking at it. I'm using it.
So you can see it, but we can't.
Yeah.
And you've got share screen on.
Yeah. I'm showing application window. Share.
But it's trying to do something.
Yeah. Can you see the screen at all?
Well, we can see them. No, but what we can do is it's buffering. Oh no, we've got something else. Yeah, I think we've got your screen.
Well, I'm at a loss. Really?
I
don't know what to do.
Well, you could carry on, and you could carry on, but you'd have to describe each bottle.
You're going to need very good imagination.
What you could do is, you see, it's all in your hands. That's the trouble. If we'd got your link, we could have helped you upload it. But what you could do is choose.
No.
What about choosing some bottle tops? And we've got lots of comments. I wonder if anybody's trying to help. Somebody's put, have a beer, folks. The bar's open. This proves it's live. And then
yeah, it's definitely live.
It says maybe not put it full screen.
I tell you what, you can watch it from my second screen.
Hey.
How about that?
Well, let's see if that works. Hey.
This is a bit Heath Robinson.
Oh, now we need some string and some safety pins. Here we are. If you sort it out, Phil, can you redo it tomorrow night? Another chance for a drink together. That's from John Billingsley. Oh, you know, everybody's with you on this, Phil. You know, this is the nightmare. This is the thing that's made our heart rates go. I think this is a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's give it a go.
If you just can you see the light that's reflecting on your screen? If you can get rid of that.
Yeah.
Might leave you in total darkness, but that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, can we make it any bigger? Can we make that screen any bigger? So if I back off,
How's that? How does that look? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm assuming you can hear me. So let's push on. So between the Crayford Marshes and my hometown of Huddersfield and the Bottle Top's place of origin in Lublin, there was established in my mind a kind of triangulation of meaning and connectivity. The random sliver of metal becomes a receptor and resonator of feelings. For Lublin is a place that I've visited many times, and I've had many happy memories of drinking Perla with friends in the bar adjacent to the brewery. But there are other residences too, more darker, a reminder of the main reason that I have tended to visit Lublin and that in the past, and that has been to pursue an interest in the city's role as an epicenter of the network of Nazi death camps in the Holocaust. So all of these things are all wrapped up in that one little piece of tin. And this is something I've described in my chapter for Tina Richardson's book on contemporary British psychogeography, in which I've talked about my extensive travels and walks in strange cities. A practice and a sensibility has emerged whereby I find myself walking through temporal layers of history, but also transcending space. But I feel myself to be simultaneously walking in more than one place at the same time. Because of the ubiquity of the bottle top, they've become my constant companion on many walks, and therefore hold an ability to transport me. This humble piece of tin was first invented by Irishman William Painter in 1892 and has proved remarkably resilient. It fulfills its intended function brilliantly. It's still protecting its precious liquid 128 years later, and it carries inscribed upon it a message, sometimes clear, sometimes simple, sometimes obscure or multi-layered. Yet at one level, it's an instrument of consumer capitalism, of Guy Debord's spectacle, of marketing to a manufactured design. All it asks of us is to assuage our desire, and then demands that we do it again and again and drink to excess in ways which are ultimately unhealthy for us, but greatly enriching to the merchant. But what attracts me to the bottle top is that it has its own agency and a life independent of its original creator. It has a life beyond its intended function. It lives on once you've slaked your thirst and tossed it thoughtlessly away. It is used very creatively and remuneratively in societies that understand the importance of waste and recycling. And in Germany, where they really understand these things in contrast to wasteful Britain, they go to great lengths to recycle caps, put them to all manner of uses. This Kronkorkenkunst, bottle top art, is not particularly to my taste, but it's clearly something with skill. And some German people even seem to love their bottle tops so much they take them on holiday with them. So in the UK, I've only come across one person who is doing anything interesting with discarded bottle tops. She's called Alice Bradshaw, and she turns out to be a near neighbour of mine. So we hope to collaborate. We're planning some kind of Alexander Calder-inspired mobile of bottle tops to hopefully display in a gallery somewhere. Alice is interested in stories, and so am I. So for this final section of the talk, I'm going to expand on some of the many stories that can be found and released from these little circles of metal. Some are stories that are deliberately placed there by the designers. A second category is where I use the top of as a trigger, as a launch pad for a story which tells us something more widely about the world. Or finally, I'll recount some stories that emerged when, shortly before lockdown, I held about a dozen interviews with various people and asked them to respond to bottle caps that I showed them. So here's a cap I picked up from a beer in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. I suppose it looks like Egyptian hieroglyphics, doesn't it? It's whether it is deliberately trying to convey this or not, I'm not sure. But for me, it triggers a story and a little known fact, I think, that the great civilization of ancient Egypt was, would you believe, built on beer. Beer was the daily staple drink and foodstuff of everyone in Egyptian society. If the pharaohs had failed to supply their thousands of workers with a daily supply of beer, they'd have never seen their pyramids completed. And here too is a bottle cap from Oregon, but it's dedicated to Ninkasi, the goddess of beer of the Sumerians, the first great civilization of ancient Mesopotamia. You make gods for things that really matter, like rain and fish and the sun, and beer was right up there. So one thing which links these ancient cultures with Northern and Western Europe of the Middle Ages was not only that there was a mass and daily consumption of beer, but that this beer would have been brewed almost exclusively by women. And because beer was ubiquitous, not only as a source of basic sustenance, but free from infection. And the brewing was something that happened in every neighborhood and every street, and it was conducted in the household. And the whole process from manufacturing, flavoring, through to distribution was done by and controlled by women, known as alewives or brewsters. Some women got extremely skilled in creating special concoctions of herbs and spices for favorite flavorings. And both women and men kept coming back for more. And this gave women tremendous power and influence within their communities. But there came a time when some men could no longer tolerate these seats of power, over which they held little or no sway. Potentates began to realize that the brewing of beer involved enormous transactions of wealth, and that the ability to control those transactions, to control the taxation of such transactions, was going to be lucrative. So the first men to spot this opportunity and make a land grab were the church and the great monasteries. And to this day, we kind of romantically now celebrate the role of the monk in brewing and consuming fine ale. But however, it seems more authentic when it's got a monk on it, doesn't it? But the church was successful in removing women from the seats of control by using the power of God against them. It was a short step from esteeming the alewives, who knew secret recipes for the best beer to branding these same women as witches with magical, malevolent spells. And there's even a bottle cap for that too. So it's funny that many of the tropes and accoutrements we associate with witchcraft derive from the world of neighbourhood brewing. An alewife would have surrounded herself with cats in order to keep vermin away from her ingredients. And when the brew was finished and ready to sell, she would stick a broomstick above her door and say, "It's ready, come and get it." So with consumption and taxation goes power, and everyone wanted a piece of the action. First the abbots, but no sooner had they got supplanted the alewives than even more powerful people wanted to muscle in. Kings and princes had a constant stream of wars to finance. There's little more reliable than beer drinking and taxation to finance them. Strangely, to this day, the beer cap designers devote more space to blokes with crowns than almost any other figure. They held their positions of dominance in the beer trade until mercantilist capitalism began to elbow its way onto the scene. The merchants of London, Antwerp, Amsterdam and Hamburg went into alliance with the farmers and brewers to wrest control from the spendthrift monarchs. The power of beer taxation was such that it was attributed a leading responsibility for enabling the Dutch nation to finance their war of liberation from the Spanish, no less. The bottle-top pantheon is full of wealthy men in ruffs. But during the 20th century, beer fell under the control of modern, rational, monopolizing corporations with tentacles of influence spreading far beyond single states. It's funny, though, we don't find many bottle tops at all which mark or celebrate the role of the corporate executive or the hedge fund manager in brewing. They're almost invisible. In fact, there are probably more portrayals of Lenin on bottle tops than there are of monopoly capitalists. There you are. One thing that attracts me to bottle tops is their portrayal of place. It's clear, intensely local, intense pride of place. I'm not really going to say much more about that. It's pretty obvious. But what I want to use this as a trigger for is to speak about when bottle tops masquerade under an assumed identity or locality, which may be far removed from the truth. Here's a tender, romantic, extremely well-known portrayal of locality. There could be very few more locally grounded brands than Newcastle Brown anywhere in the world. The brand, the name, the skyline, the bridges of the Tyne have been central to this product since the 1920s. It just has to come from Newcastle, doesn't it? Well, it did until it was bought up by a larger corporation in the 1990s. And then that fish was subsequently swallowed by a bigger fish, and a bigger fish, and a bigger fish, until, well, a decade ago, no one was really sure where Newcastle Brown was made at all anymore. But the corporate marketeers worked out that it was being drunk in heavy quantities, mainly by young Americans, mainly students, and not by flat-capped wearing Geordie shipbuilders and coal miners for whom it had been originally created. And so it seemed entirely rational to move production of Newcastle Brown, lock, stock and barrel, out of Newcastle, out of Britain, out of Europe, and relocate it in Petaluma in the Bay region of California. Well, I suppose they have got a bridge. This is a bottle of Carullo beer. Where's it from, do you think? Any guesses? I'll give you a clue. It's from Europe. If the bowl and the colour scheme lead you to think it's from Spain, then you would be following the path intended for you by the brand marketers. Carullo beer is only sold in the UK by Aldi, a German supermarket chain, and is clearly aimed at Brits who have been on holiday in Spain and would like to recreate the good vibes of a cold beer under the burning Iberian sun, even though they're actually drinking it in Huddersfield, where it's probably been pissing it down for the last 3 days. But this is just one layer of dissimulation. The beer is produced in neither Spain nor the UK. It comes from a brewery in the Netherlands called Swinkels, but they market themselves under the name Bavaria because they probably want you to believe that their beer is German. Are we actually looking at the liquid equivalent of Europop? For me, the bottle top is like a window or a portal into the murky, shady world of globalization, a world where money, power, ideas are connected, but in ways we rarely see or appreciate, a world where things that psychogeographers care about are often mashed and mangled beyond recognition. Place, space, identity, belonging, ownership are not always what they seem to be. All too often, the story is one of loss in the face of the relentless and irresistible march of corporate power. But the bottle top tells a story of resistance and a turning of the tide. The biggest beer brand in the world is Budweiser, produced in St. Louis, Missouri, originally for the American market, but now worldwide. The name is a German-English corruption of the ancient Czech brewery of Budvar. And the American beer is inspired, is insipid and gassy, whilst the Czech beer is simply miraculous. But the American Budweiser has done everything it can to put Budvar out of business, but it's failed. Budvar has won most of the international lawsuits, and its beer is selling better than ever, and it remains in public ownership. It's even had the cheek to christen one of its beers as Bud, in imitation of the American idiom. I love these David and Goliath stories. There's an even better one, I think, attached to the Belgian beer Hoegaarden. This distinctive, milky, white beer has always been produced exclusively in the eponymous Belgian village of Hoegaarden. It was bought out and swallowed up by the largest beer company in the world, AB InBev. And after that, the corporate executives couldn't really see any reason why this beer should carry on being produced in this inefficient little village. And they planned to move it completely to a different part of the world. But the brewery staff and the residents and the whole village had other ideas. They ran such a successful campaign of resistance that AB InBev gave it in, and they allowed Hoegaarden to be the sole producer of its own beer. Amazing. Other places could and should do it. Just one final postscript to the way we think about globalization through the prism of the bottle top. Shortly before the onset of coronavirus, I'd taken to collecting bottle tops through exchanging them with a handful of other collectors that I'd discovered around the world. And then during lockdown, with nothing much else to do, as you can imagine, this got really supercharged. And because I've kind of spent my life, my work life and my leisure traveling, I'm an inveterate traveler, and suddenly I couldn't go any further than the local football field. I started using the bottle tops that I was trading as a kind of vicarious way of continuing to travel, and the bottle top became my portal in another way. Anyway, during March, I got friendly over the internet with an Italian man, and he was telling me he was holed up in his apartment in Lombardy, and literally had not been out at all. And occasionally he was allowed to go to the post office to post and receive consignments of bottle tops. Anyway, so there he was sitting in the European epicenter of COVID. And one of the caps that he sent me is this one, which on the face of it, it's not very interesting to you or to me. It's just another globally greedy kind of Budweiser that looks like it's been produced in St. Louis, Missouri. But actually, when I got it and started looking into it, I realized that there was more to it than met the eye, because it's not from St. Louis, Missouri. It's from China. And it's not even from anywhere in China. I couldn't believe it. I almost collapsed in shock when I realized where this cap was manufactured. It came from Wuhan in China. And so this insignificant bit of tin started life in the place where COVID first flared up. It then followed the route that COVID forged to recreate itself in Lombardy, with this guy holed up in his apartment. And then finally it found its way to me, where I'm here hiding away from COVID in Huddersfield. So for me, this is the single most symbolic artifact of 2020. So enough stories of power and global reach. I'll finish with a few more intimate tales and experiences which arose from the series of interviews I held face-to-face with people back in February. I presented various people with a random selection of several hundred caps that I'd picked up on my travels. In each case, I asked respondents to pick out a small selection of caps that appealed to them in one way or another. Maybe they knew the brand, but actually it mattered not one jot whether they knew it or whether they were even interested in beer. I was equally interested in their direct response to the imagery they were seeing for the first time. So one interviewee picked out this image of a horse, but he couldn't for the life of him explain why. It just grabbed him. He didn't know what it represented or where it was from. In fact, he wasn't even sure if it was a horse or a bull, but he knew that the image was already lodged in his brain. I knew a little bit about the guy, and I think I was able to find the link, because this is a beer that's taken its imagery from the white horse in Kilburn, on the side of a hill in North Yorkshire. And I knew that in travelling by train between his parental home and his current home in Huddersfield, he would see this image out of the corner of his eye at a distance, at some distance, but on numerous occasions. And without ever kind of intellectually logging that fact, it had lodged itself in his subconscious. And on the topic of eyes, that same respondent picked out this cap as well. He didn't know the image, but the brand, he didn't know the brand, but the image appealed to him because the character had an eye missing. The same as him. This particular cap is from the Tiny Rebel Brewery in South Wales. It was picked out by quite a few of my interviewees, actually. They seemed to respond to its ambiguity, both the vulnerability, but also something slightly disquieting or even menacing about the character. In fact, one respondent said that it reminded her of the unsettling work of Portuguese artist Paula Rego, which I thought was really, really sharp. Interesting that Tiny Rebel were also publicly chastised by the authorities for their branding, which was said to be too easily encouraging children to drink alcohol. So it's a pretty controversial branding all round. Respondents also picked out caps which are ambiguous or are entirely unfathomable in some cases. Firstly, there's this one. Does anybody out there know what that is? I picked this up in Finland and I looked at it for weeks and I just could not figure out what it was and just assumed it was a pure abstraction until I finally saw this from the same brewery. And as you see, it's the top right-hand quarter of the bear's head. now seems so obvious. Lots of people pick this one out. I'd convinced myself it was some kind of mystical or prehistoric symbol, but several respondents automatically guessed that it was the central spindle from an old 45 vinyl record. Could have knocked me down. I never saw it coming. Apparently, the founder of this Orbit Brewery in London had once been a DJ, so that's why it's there. This one also attracted a lot of attention. Several people picked this one out. One respondent saw it as an example of what they call pareidolia, whereby our brain wants to see faces in abstract or inanimate objects. So this is common psychogeography ground. I'm sure many of you recognize this. Actually, this one really is meant to represent an ancient Celtic imagery. It's from the Jako brewery in Kokanin in western Poland. Now, in one case, both a husband and wife, who I interviewed them separately, but they both picked this image out. It intrigued them, but they didn't know why. They'd never seen it, they said. They didn't know where it was from in the world. But the man was later telling me about he'd been spending time doing research into his family history. And it had turned out that his family came from an area in western Poland, around a place called Kokanin. Magic? Coincidence? Who knows? All I'm saying is the inevitability of coincidence is much greater the more we pay close attention. The more, as our group of speakers from Birmingham this morning was saying, extreme noticing, or even just any noticing at all, just creates these patterns and connections in life that otherwise we might dismiss as magic. Suffice to say, without trying to overwhelm ourselves with a semiotic snowstorm of signs and symbols and data, I do think we should all pay a little more attention. That what I've tried to show is that by picking out the shapes and patterns and interconnections from this massive data, we're maybe better able to explain and negotiate and even improve upon the world around us. And that's why I do psychogeography. And you're never too young to start. Once you show a strong enough interest in something and move beyond the stage where those around you think that maybe you're going a bit crazy, they start to take an interest too. And some of them are good at it, like my 4-year-old granddaughter. I was with her in London when she spotted this orange Fanta cap on the pavement. I'd already walked over it. I'd missed it completely. But when she passed it to me, I realized it wasn't any common or garden Fanta. It turned out to be an extremely unusual one from Nigeria. I mean, this kid's got talent. Or maybe you say she's an innocent victim of grandparental indoctrination. I'll leave you to decide. I'm going to thank you now for bearing with me. If I haven't completely overwhelmed the tiny amount of interest you ever had in bottle tops, and that I have possibly stimulated any interest at all, then if you're anywhere near Halifax in West Yorkshire, then you might want to pop along to the smallest museum in the world in Worley Town, where I've currently got an exhibition of a few of my favourite bottle tops, and also a work of art created by Darren, my wife. And even if you're not interested in bottle tops, but you are interested in psychogeography, be advised that Halifax is the birthplace of the co-founder of the Situationist International, Ralph Rumney. So if one of those reasons isn't good enough for you, I don't know what is. So with that, I'll thank you and say time for another drink.
Well, Tim, what a film. Are you there? Yes. Can you hear me? Are you there, Phil?
Yeah,
Yes.
I am. Yeah.
What a
Yes.
fantastic presentation. I mean, I know all the glitches made it really difficult and that we finally managed to, but what a wonderful presentation. I think you should film it, because I think it would be lovely for people to be able to see the full show with all the bottle tops. And we've had you've had a few people. I don't know if you've managed to look at the comments, but there are some people saying they want
Oh
to.
God, no.
Well, no, they're great. Somebody's saying, Phil, I have some caps for you. And,
Great! That's what I want.
and John Billingsley, again, the geographical dislocation of local beers seems to follow a similar trajectory to the delocalization of town pro football teams. Ooh.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
John.
yeah. And then he's put, do it again, because I think people have absolutely loved this. You're understand the global story that you've taken us on has been absolutely fabulous. And I'm not a beer drinker, but by God, I'm going to start. Now, no, we've got some time. We've got plenty of time. Now, there was a point in your presentation where you were going to interact with people, weren't you? You were going to ask people to join you in a discussion about their bottle tops. And there are some, as I say, there are some comments. Somebody also, this is a very local comment, says we should be in Bar Maroc with its bottle top tables. I spend ages looking at them when I'm there. This is a local pizzeria that has the embedded bottle tops embedded in the tabletops. But we've got plenty of time before we go to over to Tim Waters' radio show. And I know our Tim O'Connor is also a beer aficionado. And I don't know, Tim, if you want to enter the live stream. I mean, look, can I just say, people, Tim O'Connor is actually in his own bar and illuminated behind him. The lights are very bright, Tim. Could you just talk us through the emblems behind you? Because it looks to me like a cowboy boot.
Indeed, there is a cowboy boot behind me. This is Miller Genuine Draft is the cowboy boot. Unfortunately, the contrast. And next to it is Miller, being one of the broad, mainstream American brands. Schaefer is a little bit more niche, and there's a Hobgoblin one just up there, which you may be able to get a glimpse of, and then there is the little Watneys, which is sufficiently distant to one can now be postmodern and actually
as it should
celebrate.
be. It should be distant. Tim,
I won't bother taking you.
Can you kill one of them?
I can kill them all, but then that kills me.
Can you kill one of them? Can you kill one of them? Is it all or nothing?
Well, see, now we're in the boundaries of the technology.
No, we've been there. We've done that. Phil, thank you so much for recovering from that difficult technical situation. But I mean, your enthusiasm and the places that you've been and the understanding that you've developed is absolutely fabulous. I could do it all again without a shadow of doubt.
Well, I'll just pick up on the point that was made about local beers and locality, and somebody talked about Bar Maroc, and just remind ourselves that before COVID came along, we were already talking about this, doing this as a presentation as part of a wider theme around the psychogeography of beer, and we were going to do it at the Magic Rock Brewery and Bar. They'd very kindly offered to host it, and we had a range of speakers who were going to talk about different aspects of beer and drinking and pub culture. So, but what's that? That's a prelude to talking about that. Actually, Huddersfield itself, which likes to pride itself on all kinds of things, including its beer, and there are about maybe 8 or 10 independent breweries in Huddersfield, and yet there is not a single bottle top from a Huddersfield beer.
No.
One.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Because they either use cans or they very lazily don't put any kind of inscription on their caps at all, which I think is really sad and a bit mean and a false economy, actually. And
we need a campaign, Phil.
I would love
We
them
need
to
a
do something
campaign.
about it. Yeah, we do.
We definitely need a campaign on this one. I think that's shocking that you should have an opportunity to do that and then you ignore it and just have a blank. That's terrible. There's somebody who's, I think people who are using Facebook who aren't actual Facebook members themselves, it just comes up as Facebook user. But here's an interesting comment. I've taken a photo to share of a percussion instrument, a sort of urban seed shaker I made from bottle tops I collected. It always gets comments for its unique timbre when I play it, which is usually in pubs. That sounds worth having a look at, doesn't it? I mean, you can follow these up, can't you, Phil? Can you follow up these comments?
I will do later. Yeah. Yeah, the Kurt Burton rapier dancers, yes.
Oh,
yes,
can you see John Billingsley? Can you see John Billingsley? The Kurt Burton rapier dancers from Kurt Lees had a percussion instrument called a lagerphone, a collection of bottle tops nailed to a pole. Really worked, says John. It depends what criteria you're using, John, I suppose, in terms of accrediting it with working. But Tim, you've got an interesting. Do you mind me talking to you about your artifact, the gift that you received?
Well, indeed. I'm more engaged with other aspects of beer, in fairness, than tops. But about 6 months ago, a reunion of old school chums, because one who emigrated to New Zealand many moons ago had come back, and another one of the party, familiar with my interest in beer or devotion to beer, gave me this blank item, which you may see is bottle-shaped beer top display.
They're original bottle tops, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, yes. These are beer bottle tops that I've accrued, and must say, not over a lifetime. I only got this 6 months ago, and so this is only a portion of the past 6 months' beer bottle tops, and it does strike me as a little bit sad because Phil's account of bottle tops is basically discovering them in an archaeological fashion as well as a psychogeographical fashion, where their remains are found in the wild. And I do have a few I can offer here that I've found in the wild. But it's. I feel that thing with the bottle shaping is a bit reminiscent of the trophy room of the or the snooker room of the club in somewhere in the Rift Valley or whatever. And so I do also cherish bottle tops still in their natural environment where they actually belong on the top of bottles. Obviously, they have their natural life cycle, and they will not live there forever. But nevertheless, I feel that it is as valid to cherish them here, as I say, in their natural habitat, as when they're ground into the pavement on the approach to Prague Airport.
Oh, Phil, you've got to rejoin it to that. I think that's a bit of a challenge.
Anything goes. Anything goes in this game. I'm easy.
Well, there's something of the objet d'art, the objet trouvé, which I think is one of the things that you found, Phil, and the objet rejecté by Tim. Yes, well, I mean, lots of interest.
Yeah. Interesting. Somebody has said that Dizzy Gillespie had used such an instrument as well. So I'm happy to be in such good company as that.
Yes, indeed. Yes. I'll tell you what I found really interesting was the relationship very early on, of course I would, about the women brewers and their use of herbs. And there was a very interesting program the other day on the radio about yeast. And there are hundreds of yeast bacteria that are stored in a fridge somewhere. Did you hear that? I can't remember what it was. But you're talking about yeast and its huge significance in the making of beer and that other booze, and how again that sort of access to those yeasts for people who made bread, which again was women. And then the making of the beer, women, using herbs, women, and then the vilification of women through the persecution of witches, and then this, a potted, very swift resume of what you said, Phil, and then the taking over by the church, well, not so much the church, but by the monasteries, by the monks, to just take over that industry, as it were, and appropriate it themselves, and take again that power away from women. I found that connection really fascinating.
I mean, it's maybe we shouldn't be amazed, but it is amazing that this knowledge is so little known. Even among people who drink a lot and think they know about drink, and even among women who drink, it's come as a surprise to almost everybody I've mentioned this to. Really suppressed knowledge.
Well, is it suppressed, or is it just not seen as significant? That it just disappears.
Interestingly, we are at a time now when there are more women in brewing, in senior positions in brewing, than there have been since the time of the alewives. Actually, quite a lot of major breweries around Britain now have a woman as head brewer.
Yeah, I found it hard to make the connection between a CEO in a very corporate world, because she's female, having a connection with what you called a brewster. The female version, living in her own home in a field. I mean, Brewster's a very common name around in Huddersfield. I suppose it's common. It'd be interesting to know how many Brewsters there are across the country.
Oh, there are growing numbers. This is what I'm saying. Yeah. Even in Huddersfield, several of the breweries in Huddersfield now, their chief brewer is a woman.
Yes. But historically, everywhere across the country will have the residual family name of a Brewster.
Yeah.
So where are we now? Oh, somebody said, Richard Byrne. I heard the thing about yeast and thought of it too, Vicky. The BBC. It's Inside Science. Is that program Inside Science? Really amazing how powerful yeast has been in lives. Here's one from Graham. Tim mentioned tops in the wild. What is your most feral bottle top? That's from Graham Morrell. Your most feral. Does this mean it's sort of animated in some way?
Well, if it's feral, it has to be a beast. And I can offer you. This is obviously an archaeological one being found loose. But I can.
That's amazing.
I can offer you one that is still in its natural habitat. On the cap of its bottle. Ooh, here we go, because of there we go, and that's on the label. So.
Wow. Where's
check?
Oh, come on.
Check, is it?
No.
Can't spell.
Now I have to struggle with this. Van Storff. So this is actually, I believe, a Czech one. You see, I'm operating in the low light of this. I know it looks glary, but it's actually very subdued light by the beer science.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
Yes, I think this is one of my Czech collection. I range between the ones that I come back on, as with Phil, my ranging travels far and wide, and then my more local travels to little niche opportunities within the alleys and courts of Huddersfield, where exotic
in Little and Aldi, Tim, come on, we know.
May be found with, beyond Little and Aldi, but these bottle tops can be found with nectar hanging in glass vessels beneath.
Anyway, once the pubs reopen, once the pubs are fully reopened, I'm available for weddings, bar mitzvahs, and other celebrations. I'm happy to do the presentation again live, and
Definitely.
I'm much happier doing things live.
I think doing it at the Magic Rock is really, really a good idea. I mean, that's it's such an interesting space. We could do that. One of the things that I meant to say, of course, is that we are very Huddersfield, but all three of us live in Huddersfield, and this has been a very Huddersfield idea. This with the support from the university and the people that are in the organising group. I mean, it's very Huddersfield centric. And I suppose with the poetry night, one of the things I didn't say was, Huddersfield, and you were very heavily involved in this, Phil, as a city of culture. The internet, what were we called when we had that wonderful accolade of being the literary town of culture, because of the huge amount of poetry that went on here. It was seen as the poetry capital of the UK, wasn't it? Poets in the pubs and poets on the street and poets everywhere. And of course, I'm bringing this back in a way to the theme of the evening. But Simon Armitage is the poet laureate, and those of us who saw him as a young man spouting poetry on the street knew there was something happening here that was of great power, and here we are. And I think it has put Huddersfield on the map, and I think this is putting us on the map. So I'm sorry I've diverted a little bit, haven't I, from the theme of beer, but we have got an awful lot of microbreweries in this area too, and I think that maybe going back to poetry in pubs would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, with you behind the bar.
Well, yeah, I need to give this frilly blouse another outing, and I've certainly got the earrings. I'm torn between Bette Lynch and Peggy Mitchell.
I think I'd like to be torn between them as well, actually.
Well, as I was saying to Tim earlier, when my daughter was little and we needed bonding sessions, when she was a teenager, she wasn't little, but when you needed to watch things, we used to watch EastEnders, and we used to count how many times Peggy Mitchell came into the bar and went like this and said, "What's going on?" And then about 10 minutes later, Phil came in, "What's going on?" And we got to something like 12 in one episode. Beyond Little, Graham's put, Beyond Little and Eldale is certainly feral territory. So you didn't really answer that question because I interrupted you. The feral bottle top of all time, Phil. Which one? What about a feral bottle top? What about a feral rather than the feral?
Do you mean, I don't know what you mean by feral, really? The one that's gone wild, the one that's gone native.
Yeah, one that you haven't bought in one that you haven't bought in a store or in a pub. The found.
Oh, right.
In the wild, one that you found in the wild.
Oh God. I found lots in ruins because I've done a lot of urban exploration as well. Before my body started stiffening up, I used to climb through windows and get into buildings and get on top of empty tower blocks and things. So I found quite a few in Eastern Europe, in empty Soviet bunkers and things like that. Those are the ones that really hold a place in my heart, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Yes, you could turn it into jewellery, actually. You think you could have a pendant and wear a different one every day. I think that would be an important thing to do, display. So is there anything else? Perhaps somebody else has said, perhaps the most feral is the one lacking any design. Oh, it's a bit challenging because we're just talking about the blank ones that breweries aren't bothering to brand. An interesting thought. So, shall we? Are we finished in the pub? Is it
I've
time
got a feral one here.
Oh,
there you go. There's a feral one.
And do we know where it's come from? Do we know the label?
Well, we do, but feral beasts need love too. That's all I'd say.
Oh,
And
Well, I think that it's time to call for.
it actually came, we don't need to be too, at the risk of being too domestic, came all the way from Hepworth, which for those of you around the world is just south of Huddersfield, which does put it well in the rest of the world.
Can you just twist it a little bit, Tim, so we could see it a little bit? Red mosaic, no, the other way. Twist it the other way. Red mosaic IPA.
IPA, yes.
Oh, it's horrible. It's very frightening, that label. It's not encouraging women to drink beer, is it? There.
Come on, anyway.
We don't want to encourage. I was going to say we don't want to encourage women to drink beer. We want them brewing it. They need to be brewsters. Men can be the drinkers.
Women, yeah, but we'd have the ultimate power then, and you don't think you'd like that.
Now you'll remember. Well, you didn't. I don't think you saw the early slide, did you? That I was
nobody
talking
did.
about the Leeds Psychogeography group. I don't think you actually saw the image, did you?
No.
Well, let me
No.
let me show it you as an introduction to our host of the next session. This was my first encounter really with psychogeography and beer, and also with waters. And Tim may not thank me for this, but here he is. Can you get that?
What? What's happening?
Can you see that?
We can see Tim in front of a building, but we don't know what the building is.
Well, that was Tim. That was Tim leading the walk around the alcohol exclusion zone of central Leeds. The anarchist that he is subversively flaunting a bottle of beer. That's where I first fell under the spell of the man.
And that's what introduced you to psychogeography. Well, we're going to finish. We're going to finish now because it's time to. Tim and I have got to wash up and clean the table, clean up the pumps, and so it's well past final orders. So, Phil, a fabulous presentation. I can't wait for us to be able to see it again. If anybody out there is watching from the people that we had here tonight as guests, thank you again to them. Thank you to the fabulous work that's gone on by the 4W COP team, and thank you to everybody that's been watching as an audience. Now, what's going to happen next is we're going to have a word again from our sponsors, because we are a tied house, and we do need to go over to our sponsors to give you a message about donating. And we're going also, but importantly now, we're going to go over to Twitch. You just go to Twitch, and Tim Waters' lovely laid back videos, grooves, music and chat will see you through the rest of this Saturday evening and the big night of 4W COP, and hope to see people tomorrow at some of the wonderful events that are on the website. So thank you everybody, and thank you Tim for all your support, and thank you Phil for a wonderful presentation. Good night everybody. Okay, good night.
Thank you for joining us for a very unusual 4th World Congress of Psychogeography. While you wait for the next piece of great content, we thought you might like to hear from us about how you can support the Congress. It turns out that a virtual Congress is more expensive than a physical one. Who knew that you sitting in your chair cost us more money than walking around Kirklees? So we'd be extremely grateful if you could help us cover some of those unplanned costs via one of our crowdfunding options, which you can see here and are also linked on our social media and website. We hope you enjoy the content, and make sure to get involved on our social media channels or in the chat, because we can't wait to hear from you. Enjoy the show, and we look forward to seeing you back in Huddersfield next year.